Welcome to the crypto trading channel. My name is Stu. Guys, Bitcoin as well as the altcoin market have been showing signs of strength, but to be quite honest, I think the bulls still have a lot of work to do to prove themselves for the longer term trend for any hopes of a real recovery. But for the shorter term, it's nice to at least see some signs of life. Bitcoin has already reached my first bounce target, but will the bulls be able to push higher? Or is the downtrend over the last few months just still way too strong? One thing is almost certain: the market makers are not going to make this easy on traders' emotions. And no matter which way we go from here, I'm expecting a lot of choppy volatility, which is exactly why it's important to trade systematically instead of emotionally on gut feelings. So with that, let's dive into a few charts, starting with the Bitcoin 4-hour chart here, you guys. As I mentioned, we have reached my first bounce target, and that's just from this bullish STUBER that I had laid out. Although it's not the main range that I'm concerned about for the trend, it is at least a valid setup, right? The fact that we had this structure here with a low, lower low, confirmed lower high. I've been talking about this one on the last couple of streams here. Basically, we did end up coming down, basically testing the 886 perfectly, and we have so far ended up hitting that 0.5 fib. The reason why I think it's still possible that the bulls have a little fuel in the tank yet is simply the fact that we never did hit my second target yet, which would be the 214, closer to 69.7K. So we're going to have to see if we actually get that or not. I mean, overall, guys, the trend is still just very bearish for me. And the lower high that I'm mostly interested in for the actual trend is still the 77K level. Just because if we actually zoom out this little bit, that's our low, lower low. Highest point between the two is right here for our confirmed lower high at 77K. Until we end up taking that out, unfortunately, the 4-hour trend is still bearish, even with this little structure that we have forming here, even with this bullish setup that's here. That has been playing out so far. Still, as far as the actual trend, I still have my concerns. And guys, for those of you who are interested in just seeing way more examples of basically how I am looking at the market structure in general, some of my trade setups, strategies, warnings, and so on, be sure to scan the QR code on the screen to gain access to my private Telegram, which will also grant you free unlimited algo bot trading as well, due to our exclusive partnership with Prime Automation. But yeah, with that, guys, looking at the 4-hour, like I said, still very possible we end up going a little bit higher. If we do end up hitting that second target, like I was talking about, that 214 target, notice how that would line up is if we actually look at how the ranges chop around and really dissecting the price action here is I don't actually have this marked out right now, but we technically on this little trend, right, where we ended up getting this little bullish reversal here inside this range, is this would have been our last high and higher high on that little push to the upside, and obviously lost this level here, right? The low between the two. So at this point, if we end up getting up to that 214 bullish fib target, that would be, it would also line up very close to the resistance of that new bearish fib pull, something like that, right? Using this as our confirmed or bearish pivot right there, just because we lost that bullish momentum there. So still very possible that we end up getting this test up here. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're bullish if we climb to there, right? It just means that at that point, we are just retesting resistance. And just something catching my eye right now, just looking for additional confluence with that level as we approach those resistance levels, is what about this as well, is we would also likely have a diagonal resistance line that is lining up quite well with the start of that resistance, right? Obviously, it depends how we get there, if we even get there. But if we shoot up there relatively quickly, even over the course of the next day or two, it would be very close to retesting those Fibonacci resistance levels, as well as a nice third touch point on this downward sloping diagonal trend line. And if we get that, you guys, that's something that could lead me to be a little bit more bullish, is if we get a third rejection. I would really like it to be pinpoint accurate. When it comes to diagonal trend lines, I really like the wicks to touch absolutely perfectly. So if we end up getting a third touch point there of some kind with a little pullback, and then end up breaking this level, that's where I would start to consider the possibility that we're actually going to break out and end up breaking that resistance. But so far, it is what it is. That's basically what I'm looking at. I want to also just map out that potential resistance there. And yeah, already have this white line for this range here. So yeah, just a few resistance levels that I'm looking for there. If we end up getting rejected, whether it's right here, because right, I mean, as far as the Stuber fib goes, I mean, we did test that 0.5 fib, so it's possible we just hit the first target and then end up dumping from here. We'll have to see what happens. I'll also zoom into some shorter time frames, take a closer look. But whether we get rejected here or we end up going higher and getting rejected, really even all the way up to that 77K level, like I mentioned, as if we end up getting rejected from any of these levels, I'm still open to the idea of testing a lot closer to basically where we ended up finding support so far, right? Obviously, we don't have to end up going down there. I just think it would make a lot of sense because we never did retest this support after basically finding our pivot there. So that support would technically start around 62.5K. And really the swing fail liquidity grab zone for me goes all the way down to approximately 57.9K. If we end up dropping that level, I mean, that's where we have to zoom out and start looking at some of those weekly levels because things could get very ugly from there, but we will just have to see. So one setup at a time, right? As I'm looking at it right now, basically we're in this range between these white lines. The bigger trending range is from that 77K all the way down to about 59, well, call it 59.8K, really well, close to that 60K level. So that's basically a very large range, and we are just forming smaller ranges inside the big main range. So have to see what happens there. The weekly time frame, like I said, guys, the bulls have so much work to do to prove to me that we're actually bullish on a longer time frame. I mean, we look at the weekly chart here and just don't shoot the messenger here, guys, but just looking at the structure for what it is, we have our low there, lower low there, highest point between the two. My confirmed lower high is up all the way at 98K. So understand that even on a macro time frame, when we're looking at the weekly chart, we could bounce all the way up towards 98K and still be in a bearish trend, right? So obviously there would be plenty of positions to be taken in there, plenty of opportunities to both directions. But just saying it for what it is, unfortunately, that's the chart structure that we currently have. I still personally think that we are on our way a little bit lower. I still think it's very possible we end up tagging 40K or even a little bit lower, but obviously that doesn't have to happen, right? We're just going to have to see. It's not like I'm in a YOLO short and not willing to DCA until those levels or not willing to take profits on shorts until those levels. It's nothing like that. I'm just really zooming out and looking at possibilities just so that I can keep a level head if those things happen, right? Because a lot of people are saying that 40K is just not even possible. Anybody saying that, this is clearly their first market cycle because Bitcoin has humbled all of us more than once who have been in this market for more than a full cycle. But anything is possible. And a typical Stuber fib setup, you guys see, those of you guys who are joining my live streams, those of you guys in my Telegram, all that stuff, you guys know how often I look at these Stuber fibs, and whether it's the 4 hour, the 1 hour, 5 minute, 15 minute, weekly, whatever, I treat market structure the same every time, you guys. So yeah, it doesn't have to end up hitting these levels. But if we do hit those levels, I'm going to be ready for it. And I'm going to be DCA in spot. I'm going to be looking for shorter time frame leverage setups for the long side. I am going to be looking for bullish setups because for me, when a lot of people start saying that Bitcoin is dead, right, as we test support and retail starts FOMO shorting aggressively, thinking that we're going to zero, that will be a great opportunity for a buy level, in my opinion. Even if we go lower, I'm totally happy DCAing down there because you know what, if you really want to say it for what it is, there was a lot of people not only DCAing and buying with a ton of FOMO at the all-time highs at above 120K, but also using leverage and leveraging into that FOMO at all-time highs when I was warning why I was taking a short at 125.2K because of market structure and just a basic swing fail, right? So if it comes down to whether I want to be DCAing above 120K or down at 40K, I know which one that I would personally rather take. So yeah, I treat leverage trading and spot trading, or I shouldn't even say spot trading, more so spot holding. I treat my leverage trading account significantly different than I trade my or even just treat my investment account, right, with my spot holdings. So yeah, I've absolutely been DCAing. I even mentioned in the Telegram, you guys, I think when we were around 63K or so, that I was closing a bunch of my short position from 89.9K, and I was starting to DCA into my spot holding positions. I bought a bunch of Troll, bought some Bitcoin, bought some Hype, some Solana, all that sort of good stuff, you guys. So just basically willing to take some shorting profits on the way to the downside and DCAing at, because no matter how you look at it, yeah, it might take a while, but even if Bitcoin's in a full-on bear market, it won't last forever, at least in my opinion. I hope it doesn't, and I don't think it will. I'm sure that eventually we will see another bull market, a nice bullish trend. And at that point, I really feel like whether I'm buying at, 60K, 40K, all of the above, I think that I will be happy with my decision rather than FOMOing at all-time highs, right? So yeah, the long-term trend, there's still, like I said, a lot of red flags. I still think that we could go lower, but we're just going to have to see if we actually do get these levels, right? If we do end up hitting those Fibonacci levels, I will absolutely be a buyer. Looking at the shorter time frames, guys, there is technically we are at resistance right now. I do want to say right now clearly that although we're at resistance, and resistance is resistance until it's broken, it is very high risk right now to be shorting this, just because of the fact that this resistance level has technically already played out, right? The fact that we lost our uptrend, we ended up getting that big retracement, tested the 786, 886 absolutely perfectly. I don't know if you guys are seeing this, but my video lag is starting to get absolutely insane for some reason. But basically, we ended up coming up, filling that STUBER fib pocket absolutely perfectly, hitting the first target, the 0.5 fib, hitting the 214 target. So that setup, that bearish setup actually happened very fast, right? It happened within about 15 minutes, 3 candles on the 5-minute time frame, and we smashed those 2 targets. So at that point, and even the fact that it happened again, right? The fact that we got this back to the first target, and even another one tested the 786 again and hit the first target again. So this setup, this bearish fib pull setup, has actually played out a few times already. So at that point, it just gets a little bit riskier for me that, it's possible we end up smashing through, just because we've been testing this resistance so many times. And like I said, on the 4-hour chart, the fact that we haven't really retested the main resistance of this range yet. So I still think it's possible we go higher, but that doesn't mean that I'm bullish. It more so means that I'm just willing to accept a bounce, and I will be looking for new short opportunities if we do bounce near the top of that range. Taking a look at the long short ratio, you can see that retail started building shorts a little bit as we tested into this support here. So not too surprising to see this little bit of a bounce. If we see longs start to pick up as we test even just some of these resistance levels here, even a diagonal, right? We may end up forming something like that. Basically, same thing as what I showed on the other chart, basically. But yeah, if we end up getting up to these resistance levels and we see retail start FOMOing into long positions, at that point, I think it would be beautiful liquidity for the market makers to end up pushing us to the downside and maybe even setting some new lows there. Guys, a lot of altcoins, like I said, are starting to show signs of strength, and I have mixed feelings on the Bitcoin dominance chart right now. I believe I pointed this out on my last stream as well. The fact that technically, much like that bearish fib pull that I was just showing on the 5-minute for Bitcoin, we have something very similar, but on the opposite side for Bitcoin dominance, where we are currently testing support. So if Bitcoin dominance ends up finding support here and climbing to the upside, that would be a bad sign for the altcoin market and just the market in general. That if focus is on Bitcoin and, people are basically scared to be in the riskier assets and they're sticking with the king, the one that's, as far as high risk assets go, it is the lower risk asset of the bunch. So if people are more so scared and sticking with Bitcoin rather than diversifying into altcoins and getting greedy and that sort of thing, you know, at that point, it would just show a little bit of weakness. Whereas if this does end up rolling over and Bitcoin dominance continues to kind of roll over and plunge, that would be a great sign for the market. That would show so much strength for the altcoins for me, because again, it would just show that people are willing to go risk on. People are feeling confident and they're willing to go into the higher risk assets like altcoins and meme coins and stuff like that. And the reason, even though this is a bullish STUBER here, the reason why I still think it's possible we round over and drop to the downside is just because, you know, we have bounced off this support a couple of times already. Right. So at this point, I would love to see us rolling over. Did something just happen with my stream? Something just changed on me here. Hopefully you guys are still here with me. Yeah, something's going weird with the lag here. But yeah, anyways, like I was saying, if Bitcoin dominance ends up rolling over, that would be a great sign for the market. If Bitcoin dominance starts climbing, that would be a bad sign for the market, in my opinion. Ethereum, much like the 5-minute setup that I showed on Bitcoin, you guys, is we are technically trading at that resistance level, much the same. Right, we end up getting this plunge, low, lower, low, lower, high, pulling a bearish fib from there, just because this is our confirmed bearish pivot point here. But again, guys, this is all very high risk right now, just because so many assets right now across crypto are at resistance, but it's been tested several times. So it just gets riskier, right? Because like I said, I mean, this has played out several times as well, right? We ended up hitting our 786 resistance level, target 1, target 2. We end up hitting our STUBER fib, hitting the 786 and the 886 there, hitting target 1, 786, target 1. So same thing, right? It's so resistance is resistance until it's broken, but just the fact that that bearish setup has already played out 2 or 3 times just makes me a little hesitant to pull the trigger again. Solana, very, very similar. I mean, we could go from this pivot back here, but more so on the shorter time frames, just noticing a little bit of microstructure that broke on the 5-minute. So this would actually be a new setup that could be lining up here for a potential scalp short setup. So basically, again, just dissecting things, really micro analyzing, but we had this high. We obviously got this little pullback, this red candle here, and we set a higher high, even though it's just a wick. We did go higher. The lowest point between the two is right here where my white line is. And although it was brief, we got a bit of a swing fail here. We did technically set a new low there, right? We broke this white line. So at this point, I would be treating this as a bearish confirmation point. And if I was looking for a scalp setup here, I would have my fib pull something like this. Now, if you're thinking that, hey, it already played out once here, that's actually, it hasn't, because the fib pull is from here down to here. And since we formed this range, we have not tested our resistance level yet. So that would be one scalp setup to look for with Solana. I want to zoom out to the 4-hour, just see what we got. I know the 4-hour actually had this bullish setup. It's just that it's one of those setups that's technically already played out, just like that Bitcoin one on the 4-hour, but very similar. Actually, this is even nicer structure than the Bitcoin one, just because we, as far as this range goes, at least, well, actually, I shouldn't say that. It's more so that we got all the way up to the resistance level with Solana much quicker. Like I said, with Bitcoin, we need to end up hitting about 77K to end up testing that lower low. But with Solana, we had that low, lower low. Same thing. This would be equal to that 77K level with Bitcoin, right? So if I map out resistance there, just notice where we actually ended up finding resistance here. If I pull a bearish fib there, notice that that actually did play out, right? We ended up basically testing that 786 and then going down to the first target, at least the 0.5 fib from here, basically testing it again. But if we want to really dissect what's going on here and look at the more immediate price action, is we technically did break this level, right? Slightly higher there. Lowest point between the two is right here. And if I pull a bullish fib from there, because obviously higher high, confirmed higher low, pull a bullish fib from there, just like I did with Bitcoin earlier. And you can see the same thing, except it's actually performing a little bit stronger even, because with Bitcoin, we basically tested the 0.5 fib and got rejected, whereas some altcoins like this are actually pushing a little bit higher. So again, just a perfect retest of that 786, hitting the 0.5 fib. And from there, we see what happens. I really see no reason why we wouldn't end up testing a little bit higher. That second target would be around 88 US dollars. So I do think Solana can move a little bit higher. And honestly, that's just kind of how a lot of altcoins look to me right now. So just something to consider there. I am planning to have my eye on some more altcoins moving forward, much like Hype. You guys, I know I shared this setup on a couple of streams ago. Basically, we came down, tested all my support fibs, right? 786, 886, the 1, and basically the 115. And so far, we have hit that 0.5 fib. So obviously that move is already well underway. But yeah, it's just typical STUBER price action, right? Just getting after you see those pullbacks, you see those structure breaks. It's just so often you end up testing back down into these fib levels. And that's why I always like trading retracements, basically. That's why I love trading Fibonacci's in general, because rather than playing breakouts, I just like waiting for those pullbacks because you have a much tighter invalidation level, basically. So Hype actually looking quite good. The next target for Hype for me would be approximately $31.45. So we will see if we end up getting that. As far as meme coins go, you guys know that I love my troll coin. Just pulling up the Market Dynamics Pro indicator by Chart Prime. Notice that we have this money flow point of control indicator showing here, and that's exactly where we're finding support, basically where the main money flow has been controlling this price. Basically, yeah, we had an absolutely insane blow off top. We did about a 25x there in the first pump and came right back down to that support level. So do I think it's a dead coin? No, I think it's a very active community. It's obviously very high risk, you guys, currently sitting at about a $19 million market cap. And just as a Solana meme coin, there's just a ton of risk involved with them. But as far as meme coins go, this is my personal favorite. I'm not telling you what to do. Obviously, you do what you're comfortable with, but always consider risk management when you're trading very risky assets like this. But as far as it goes, I mean, we're just coiling up. Yeah, it was a big move, big blow off top, big downtrend, obviously. But since that, notice that the range is getting much, much tighter, and it's really not going to take much. And even looks like we're starting to do it now, where we end up breaking through one of these tightly consolidated ranges. Yeah, actually, we are starting to break out of this guy here. If I just mark where we obviously got a few touch points, a few resistance touch points on this very small little range here. And notice this is on the daily chart, but we are starting to just look like we're forming a bit of a rounding bottom, starting to break some structure levels at a main point of control here. So yeah, as far as high risk, very high risk assets, I'm liking the look of that one personally. Bitcoin, one other thing I wanted to point out on the 4-hour, you guys, is again bringing up a couple of indicators. Market Dynamics Pro, so the money flow point of control significantly higher on the 4-hour right now. So again, guys, we could go very high and still have a bearish trend. But yeah, at this point, I'm not really worried about that guy. However, if I bring up the Market Oracle Pro Plus indicator, notice that we have resistance coming in a lot closer and a lot more relatable to the current price action, because we have this band or this reactor down here. You can see that it's kind of catching up towards my structural levels when just looking at the horizontal structure resistance levels. Very much so starting to try and catch up to the price. And also the second one is lining up currently perfectly with that 77K level that I had on my radar. So there is just some overlapping confluences between some of my structure levels and indicators. And for me, I always like looking at market structure first and then looking at indicators for confluence. But that is something that has been catching my eye more recently. So yeah, anyways, guys, I think that's about all I wanted to go over today. So one last time, if you guys do appreciate these quick market updates, please do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And just as a reminder, guys, for those of you interested in seeing way more examples of just how I'm looking at market structure, how I'm pulling fibs, some of my trade setups and strategies, and so on, as well as access to unlimited algo trading bots for free through Prime Automation. If that does interest you, make sure you scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description down below. And if you want to give these chart prime indicators a test as well, if you use our sign up link and discount code that should be in the description down below, you will also receive a 30% discount code on those as well. And with that, guys, if there is any altcoin requests, sorry, I don't really have a lot of time here. If I miss any altcoin requests or anything like that, I will throw them into the Telegram channel shortly after wrapping up here. But yeah, other than that, I think that's about all. So with that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Thank you so much for watching once again. Peace out.